I want to clarify one more time. I am not here to sell Restaurant Systems Pro at all, because I know it sounds like, but it's just that's what made this. I mean, the difference, because I'm sitting here 2.5 years after you and I first spoke, and I was in one position then, and I'm in another position now, and 25% of the reason for that, if not a little more, is Restaurant Systems Pro. So I'm not some kind of sellout who's here to, promote these people. I'm not getting any kind of discount. I don't want anybody to think that. So it is the difference. One of the huge differences in taking us seriously from hundreds of thousands of dollars in annual losses to hundreds of thousands of dollars in net profit.
This episode made possible by Restaurant Systems Pro. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, CEO of New South Restaurant Group, Robert St. John. My man Robert, coming back for a second time. Are you feeling unstoppable today?
Always, Eric, always.
I'm feeling unstoppable today. I so enjoyed our first episode together. Just a humble, real dude. Your story is inspirational. You're vulnerable. You're willing to talk about the hard stuff, and it's been such an honor to stay connected over the past 2.5 years since we last had you on the show. That was episode 923. And what you've done in your organization, man, I'm so excited for you. Like,
thank
sincerely.
you, man. We're having fun, especially these days.
Yeah. So basically 2.5 years ago, I had you on the show. We wrapped up. You said, "Hey, Eric, what's this Restaurant Systems Pro thing that I keep hearing you promoting? Is it the real deal?" I think is what you asked me.
Yeah.
I was like, every testimonial I've gotten is honest, real deal testimonial. And you chose to reach out to Fred Langley after that conversation.
Yeah.
A lot has happened since then. We're going to dive into it. But before we get into, what's happened, real quick, how many units?
Okay, so we have New South Restaurant Group has 5 restaurants, 2 bars.
Okay.
They're all different concepts. We don't have a repeat yet. We're about to open several more of a couple of units that we have. I can go through detail on what each is, or we can do that later, or not at all.
Just name the titles.
Yeah. So,
and then name whether it's a fast casual quick service, without getting into any detail.
Yeah. So Crescent City Grill is kind of the mothership. Opened it's the first one. It's casual New Orleans themed cuisine. Mahogany Bar is a neighborhood bar specializing a lot in beer and whiskey. We have another bar called the Maple Bar, which is very cocktail centric. Italian restaurant named Tabella, open since 2011. Ed's Burger Joint will celebrate its 9th birthday tomorrow, actually.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And that's our growth vehicle. We're about to do 3 more of those in the next couple of years. The Midtowner is a breakfast lunch concept. And the Midtowner will do a couple of more units of the Midtowner. We're opening one in Gulfport. Should be open in August. We're sitting here in January, so we're 8 months away there.
Okay. All of your concepts, what's your total revenue?
Lob Lolly Bakery. I forgot
can't
about the
that
bakery.
One. Yeah, oh my God.
Yeah,
I had the croissant this morning, man. I see why everyone was saying get the croissant. It was so delicious.
Yeah. So we're having fun with the bakery. New York Times just named one of the top 22 bakeries in the country.
That's
so
awesome.
we were throwing a party.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's 5 restaurants, 2 bars right now.
Total gross.
We're about 16 million.
16 million.
Yeah.
What is your net out of that 16 million?
Out of the 16 million, we probably average across all, because we're just bringing the bakery along. Baker first profitable year will be this year. So we're sitting in between 8 and 10%.
Okay.
And we're working on it.
Yeah.
We're not happy with 8 to 10.
Yeah, moving the needle a lot. And we're going to get into the details of how those needles have moved. When I was here, we had you on the show. You were getting vulnerable. One thing I had picked up on as the host of Restaurant Unstoppable, chasing after a lot of these restaurant groups, I get a lot of notoriety and attention. On the outside looking in, place is packed. People are happy. Employees are happy. the owner is trying to figure out how to make it all work.
Yeah.
And the more and more quote unquote successful people I talk to, I realize, man, there's an issue in our industry. Like, I started this podcast to be inspirational, to go and to figure out how all these people are getting rich and to like share this knowledge. And even the people at the top are scraping.
Yeah.
And I'm asking you to get a little vulnerable here, but when I spoke to you last, where were you? Like, realistically, where were your businesses?
Not doing well at all, really. We came out of, and I don't want to blame it on COVID at all. I blame it. It's mine to my burden to bear. But we came out of COVID very unhealthy. The culture was bad. We were losing money, a lot of money. But really, I can back up before COVID, and I'm just going to tell you, I'd become a weak leader and an inefficient leader, and I had turned over a lot of my business to some of the leadership team who, I think our focus, and again, I'm not putting it on them, it's 100% me. So anything I say, I'm not disparaging people who were here before the current leadership team at all. It was my lack of leadership with them that put us in the situation we were in. In 2018, I was about that far from bankruptcy. I was on the verge, and that would have been the third time in we're in 38-year run right now. I've been in the business for 44 years now, but as an owner, I'm in my 38th year.
Wow.
And 3 times over that period, I was so close to declaring bankruptcy. Never did. Never missed a payroll. Had to, beg, bar, steal. It's the way it is sometimes. But I can look back at all of those things, and my ego wants to go, well, it was the financial conditions. It was 2008. It was this. And it wasn't. It was me. And I'm 100% believer that all problems are people problems. Therefore, all successes are people successes. And so right now, what we are celebrating in our company for the last year or so are the successes of the leadership team and the team members. So 2.5 years ago, we were bleeding money. I mean, it was we were losing money. I was having to borrow from, I'm going to tell you, it's a terrible situation if you ever have to borrow money from your mother-in-law.
Wow.
And that's where I was. I had to borrow money from my mother-in-law to make payroll. I'm sitting here talking about that person almost like I don't even know him anymore, which is a good place to be. But I was there. I was having to sell land. I was taking mortgages out of my house, whatever I could do, because I knew somewhere along the road either I was going to get it or something was going to happen. And luckily, what it was is that. And I can go into detail now, or I can keep talking about the bad times.
Go into it, man.
Let me get a little deeper into what was going on. Again, I was a poor leader. I had removed myself from kind of daily operations, and we're in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which is about an hour north of the Gulf of Mexico, an hour and a half northeast of New Orleans. Lived here all my life. I mean, I grew up about 4 blocks from where we're sitting in my office. Currently live about 6 blocks from here. So this is my home.
Yeah.
And so I know the area and I know it well. And this is, what happened is we got into a situation to where we were like the only bar in town for a long time. And it's easy to succeed and it's easy to do business when there's virtually no competition. And another bar or two opened up in town, and I became totally obsessed with the competition. It's a huge mistake. And I had learned it one other time before. We can go into detail later, remind me to tell you, but I want to stay focused on this because this is the most current one. And man, I would ride around, they peeled away a good bit of our business. And I would ride Friday and Saturday nights. I'd be in my car. My wife would be in the car, and I was riding around looking at the competition. Look at all these cars in the parking lot. God, they got all the, they're taking all the bit. And then I started operating and managing against my competition. They're doing this. We need to do this. They may have had this, and there's no way because of our physical plan is laid up like this. We can't do that. And I was totally obsessed with the competition. And I'm right around, the parking lot's full. Our parking lot's not full. I'm griping to the managers and, this and that and that. And about a year and a half, 2 years ago, there are about four things that totally 180 degree changed this business, which has been around almost 4 decades. And number one, I got a private restaurant coach, guy named Donald Burns. He started meeting once a week with me, once a week with my leadership team, and once a week with the C-suite. The CEO is me, COO, Chief Information Officer, Chief Culinary Officer. And that got our culture back, and it got my focus right. But the whole time the financial house was in disarray. And before I got a restaurant coach, I hooked up with Restaurant Systems Pro. And that was the financial game changer. And we couldn't really focus on the other stuff until the financial house was in order. And like I said, man, I was having to borrow money from relatives. I was just trying to keep it going, just struggling. We were losing money, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I mean, we were like a peacock business, real pretty from the outside, but inside was just vacant, and there was no substance on the inside of our business. We looked great. If you graft our, supposed success on a chart from someone looking at us from the outside, you'd think, man, that guy's killing it. Those restaurants are killing it. They're doing this. They're winning all sorts of awards. But really where it counts in the business end of things, it was a nightmare, and the culture was rotten. And so what we had to do is Restaurant Systems Pro. Here's the deal. I was looking at Restaurant 365 and Restaurant Systems Pro. I had whittled it down. I knew we needed help. And, I had CFO on staff, and we just couldn't, because again, it was me. And I kept talking to both. And the guy who was selling me, and I think I went it was about a 2-year process. I was trying to make a decision, which is stupid because we were just going further and further and further into debt. But the guy that was working for the big guys, man, he was putting the hard sell on, and he called a lot, and he was really selling. And then when I would talk to Fred, I was like, here's the owner of the company. He's talking to me. He's telling me what I need to do. He was being very frank. He was being respectfully frank, is what I'll say. And he knew, he'd seen the numbers. He knew the shape of the business. He'd seen
That's the thing. Numbers don't lie. He speaks numbers.
Yeah, 100%. And so I went with Restaurant Systems Pro, even though I thought it was not all the bells and whistles and flashy, but it's like, I'm going to get personal attention here. And that's what I needed. I needed somebody, to work with my team, because I knew it was going to be a huge change. I don't know how sporadically we were doing inventory. You can't run a responsible business and not do inventory. And we were. I'm embarrassed to say it.
How often were you doing inventory before?
I'm embarrassed to say sometimes it was once a year.
Oh, wow.
Yes, sad. Which explains why we were in the financial condition we were in. That and about a dozen other things.
Yeah.
And I'm a restaurant veteran. I mean, I know these things, but I never lost my passion, but I lost my focus. And I never lost my interest, but I'd hate to say it was ego. I don't think it was ego, because I've never really felt like I'm just the end all to the restaurant business and that. But, we started getting our financial house in order. And just to give you some numbers, I jotted down some numbers right before we met. So in 2023, our sales were good. Again, it's, the peacock out there. Sales in 2023 at home base over there, $6.3 million.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was
home
good
base
sales.
Being Crescent?
Crest City Grill Mahogany Bar.
Yep.
And Purple Parrot had maybe closed.
I think it had at that point. You had opened the Mexican restaurant.
Yeah. And our prime cost was 70%. And we got on with Restaurant Systems Pro. Some managers, we call them leadership team now, had bucked it. They didn't want to do weekly inventory. They didn't want to do the manager log. And I think that I'm actually realizing this as I'm saying it to you right now. That is when I made the leadership change. I'm sure Fred was telling me to do some things, or he was asking the right question, like, aren't you telling them to, they need to do this or something like that? And so I was like, we're going to do this. There's I think in the past, we'd maybe try something and I wouldn't follow through. I have very, very poor lack of follow through over a lot of my career. And I know what we should do and have good intentions, but if you don't follow through and make it happen, then that's weak leadership. And so it's like you're doing inventory. I mean, we had just closed a fine dining restaurant that had over 7,000 labels of wine
it's a big
in our
restaurant.
inventory. So that's a lot to count every week.
So
and I had to push through, and finally, I think by me being so adamant, because we were in such a dire situation. I mean, I was, it was all going to go down if we didn't do. So in 23, we did 6.3 million, 70% prime. This past year, which was a record year for us, and we've been in business almost 40 years. So 2024, 6.9 million in sales. So it's 10% up and a 59% prime cost. And that's just huge. And for years I had told my leadership team, guys, we got hourly labor, I remember, was hovering around 22%.
Yeah.
And I'd tell them, guys, I knew there were people just farting around, and I'd see people on the back dock when I'd come up at night or when I was driving around looking at other people's parking lots.
Yeah.
Which I don't do anymore because ours is full.
Right.
I don't look at anybody's parking lot anymore. I don't drive around town, do any of that because ours is full because I got back in the restaurant and I started leading. And, again, I'm not taking the credit. I was doing what an owner's supposed to do. And we got these systems in place thanks to them. And so I'm telling the guys, we got to break 20%. We really need to be at about 16%. Oh, we'll never break 20%.
And that's on labor.
Yeah, hourly labor.
Yeah.
Hourly labor. And I think we hit 15 this year,
Wow.
14 something. I mean, it goes through the whole company. So Ed's Burger Joint, which is a casual burger concept we have, and it's really our growth vehicle. So we're doing about $2 million in 23 before I got with Restaurant Systems Pro, about $2 million a year. Our prime cost was 74% because it's seasonal. So we do well in the season, which is spring, summer, early fall, but we weren't managing the off season. This past year, so we're up again over 10% in sales, 2.3 million, and 50% prime cost.
Wow.
50% prime in those summer months. And it's up in
And this is just with Ed's.
Yeah, just Ed's Burger Joint in mid-50s. And it's because Ed's was really the first one to go all in on Restaurant Systems Pro. We got a kitchen manager there. Justin Jordan is the general manager. He gave us no flack. And then you got a guy named John Richardson, who's the kitchen manager there. And he loved it. There was no bounce back whatsoever.
Yeah, I got a chance to sit with John quickly just while I was here in town and just grabbing some testimonials. Restaurant Systems Pro is a company I full-heartedly believe in.
Yeah.
But I think that I can say this now because I've done the work. I've talked to the people. I've gotten the testimonials. I've gone in and I've literally seen the transformations. And there's a bunch of things I've identified as where people have resistance with Restaurant Systems Pro. And I actually think when I was speaking with somebody else I sat with was your chief operating officer,
right,
Jared. Yeah, Jared said, Restaurant Systems Pro isn't just another piece of software. It's a tool to help you develop the habits to do the little things that move the needle.
That's it.
And that's exactly what it is. But whenever anyone, whether you're trying to get in the habit of going for a run every morning or eat healthier, it's about consistency over time. Yeah. You have to show up. You have to literally bore these neural pathways into your brain, and the only way you do it is by multiple repetitions, grinding until those pathways are built. And having the checklist. Restaurant Systems Pro is the checklist for the executive team. You have checklists for your frontline team, you have checklists for your managers, but where's the checklist for the executive team? That's Restaurant Systems Pro. And so just developing the habits is the hard part early on. There's a lot of resistance. There's also a lot of additional work on top of all the 80-hour, 70-hour works you're pulling. You got to go and you got to enter in all those you got to get your general ledger built, all the line items built, building out your recipes and stuff like that.
Yeah, recipes, inventory, the whole thing.
It's a lot of work to get going.
It takes a lot to get set up.
What up, Unstoppables? I have a very special offer for you that could potentially change your life. So listen up. Restaurant Systems Pro wants to make 2025 your best year ever. And here's what they're going to do to help. When you sign up for Restaurant Systems Pro through February of 2025, they will do your books, your 2024 books for you at zero charge. Nothing to you, no cost to you to do your books. Plus, you're going to get all of the Restaurant Systems Pro profitability systems. So this is such a no-brainer deal. If you've heard of Restaurant Systems Pro in the past, listening to the podcast, and you've been interested, now is the time to sign up. Head to restaurantunstoppable.com/RSP or click the link below and make 2025 your best year ever.
Again, that's, I think, when I became a more effective leader, because I was adamant, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
I'm paying for it. It's going to be a game changer. Come on, guys. Let's rally. You're just going to have to do it. You're going to have to do it. Gino with the Restaurant Systems Pro, we paid, I don't remember what it was, the version to where they entered in all the recipes and the inventory, which I'll just tell you, we couldn't have done it had we not taken that option.
Yep.
And I know this probably is sounding like an advertisement for Restaurant Systems Pro, but I'm just telling you.
We'll talk about other things today too.
No, but I mean, I'm not saying. I'm happy to talk about it because I said there were real. There are four things that brought us back to profitability and brought our culture back. And again, Restaurant Systems Pro was one. Getting a restaurant coach and an executive coach was two. I put together a C-suite. My skill set. In the early days when I opened in 87 and I was 26, and I was doing 90 hours a week behind the line in the kitchen, cooking and being the executive chef of the place, we could do it because we were small. I remember doing 35, 40,000 a week at these little two restaurants in the same building. And we ran it like a mom and pop, and we were profitable and effective, and we had tight culture and good leadership. I was plugged in. And then we started growing, and we started owning multiple units, and we had to bring other people in. And the further you get away from that original, group, you can't run it like a mom and pop anymore. Although we were really until a few years ago when we switched to Restaurant Systems Pro. You can't have more than 2 units and run it like a mom and pop effectively. You got to have systems. You have to have accountability. So my skill set is really imaging, branding, marketing, design, menu development, and creation. And that's really where my skill set lies. And that's where I'm talented. And it's also what I really enjoy. I do not enjoy the accounting end of things, although I know it's so necessary.
Right.
But I'm not the best person to follow through with systems. I know what we need to do. I can implement. I can make sure, hey, here's this. But you got to have somebody that follows through.
Yeah, Robert St. John wouldn't hire Robert St. John for that job.
No, ever. And I was doing, and then the culinary end of things and building up the culture in the kitchen. And so I was having to do all of that and was ineffective at all of it, including my skill set, because I was trying to do everything.
It pulls you off, yeah.
So
this is what they talk about in 10X is easier than 2X.
Yeah.
The idea of doing the 20% of things that you are uniquely skilled and talented to do and outsource everything else. That's building your C-suite.
Yeah, and so without any really, I had a little extra money, and so I just took a leap without any real justification or business sense, and I was like, I'm going to build a C-suite because we want to grow. We want to take care of the people that are with us, and we've got to get healthy. We got to get a better culture. We got to be more responsible business people. So Jared Patterson, who was just the GM at one of the restaurants then, became chief operating officer. So we pulled him out of that restaurant. Well, he was kind of in and out for a while, but he's now 100% out. He's able to, his skill set is systems, management, dealing with people, implementing things. I mean, all of that stuff that I was not good. My follow through wasn't good. And then we hired we already have CFO. We hired what we call Chief Information Officer. His name's Chad Carmichael. Game changer. He's the financial guy. He's on budgets. He is looking at every minute detail. If we're paying too much for those little salt shakers on this table in that restaurant, he's in there. And then sometimes he's bussing tables. It's just he's great at what he does, and he's really also in charge of Restaurant Systems Pro and operating it. And then we hired an excellent chef who had done an externship with us 20 years earlier and worked all over the country for a lot of big-time chefs, Chef Neville Barr, who's from this area, and we were glad to have him back. And he's by far the best. We've had a lot of talent come through our restaurants. This guy is so good. And he got back because our culture had taken a dip. And so that's the third component.
Or fourth? You said the
C-suite was the third. So here it is. It's RSP, restaurant coach, C-suite, and then the people, the team. And that's where I was headed. Because after COVID, and again, I'm not blaming COVID, but we're in a college town. There are 2 universities here, and we, for over 3 decades, were blessed with hiring A+ candidates, especially front of the house, A+ candidates. And COVID happened, and we're hiring warm bodies at that point, just trying to get somebody in so we can serve. Anybody listening to this in the restaurant business knows. So, and again, I'm not blaming COVID. We did what we had to do. But you manage warm bodies differently than you manage A+ candidates. And we were not adept or effective in managing warm bodies and didn't really know or have the skill set to turn them into, A+ players or cut bait quick. Because that's one thing, I hear, there's a podcast I listen to a good bit, and their philosophy, and I've incorporated with our people, is hire fast, fire faster, promote fastest.
Who's this?
Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yep.
Yeah. Hire fast, fire faster, promote fastest. And now we're really good at that. And a lot of times on leadership years back, it was slow promoting. Everybody that works with our company has been promoted. We're all from within here.
Well, you also created a situation for yourself where you can now promote. You can't promote unless you have the cash flow for those people,
True.
Right? And when you develop that cash flow, or when you better utilize the cash flow in your circumstance by dropping your prime cost by 19 or 21%, that's 21% that you can then float to increase your the cash flow to put towards your labor to bring more people on to get the chief information officer, right? Like, how many of us can do that? So you got to build a house before you move into it, and you need the cash flow to buy the materials.
I was lucky to have some cash laying around, and I could commit for a year. And I brought those 2 guys in. It was Jared and me, and Jared was stretched, and I was ineffective. And we brought the other 2 guys in and formed a C-suite. And it changed the face of this company, because and this is the beauty, the reason it works is several. One, they're very good at what they do, and they're just good all around people. But all of our skill sets are complementary. And what that allowed, having a guy being able to go hardcore in on money, and having a guy like our kitchen culture was rotten. And to get Chef Neville back there, making relationships, learning all about the family, all of the stuff he was able to take time to do That kitchen culture today is night and day, man. Those people are happy. Like we had this group in town, restaurateurs from all over the country, just left this morning. Actually, they went back in that kitchen and were just bragging on the hospitality of the dishwasher. People are coming up to greet them and happy and upbeat, and that was not the case 2 years ago. And a third of those people were here 2 years ago, and so he made that change. And then to free Jared, the COO, up to focus on the things that need to be focused with a company that has 450 people out there in different concepts, totally different.
So how did his focus shift?
Jared?
Yeah.
Well, he wasn't the GM of one restaurant trying to help in other ones anymore. We promoted Jennifer Heritage, who had been the GM at the Midtowner, into Crescent City Grill, moved someone up at Midtowner, and that freed him up to just really problem solve.
Area manager.
Yeah. A lot of what he does is, I think he's more than an area manager. He's really chief operations. He is all into the operations, and he problem solves. He's got a critical mindset. He's very firm and stern when I'm not. And so we have that allowed me to be able to do what I do, which is, again, imaging, branding, marketing, food development, design of the restaurants, things like that. That's where I'm good at.
Yeah. There's one more thing I really want to emphasize with relative to Restaurant Systems Pro before we start talking about some of the other stuff. And where restaurateurs go wrong, where the challenge is, it's developing the habits. But even if you're willing to develop the habits and do the thing, you also need to get the team to buy in wholeheartedly. Yeah. You need them to understand why it's so important. And I think one thing that you did here, which is why you had success with the program, is because you were really kind of like, there is no if you want to or not. Like, you're either doing this or there's the door. Like, this is the new standard. This is how we do it. And you're on the bus or you're getting off.
Yeah. And I wasn't always that person.
Yeah.
But after having gone through all the financial stuff, it made me be that person. And that was a game changer. Again, I'm not going to take credit for it, but I mean, that really just, once we got on with Restaurant Systems Pro, there was no alternative. You're either going to do it or we're going to have to find somebody that's going to do it. Right. And I think I said those words many times, and most of them did it. Some of them took it on, like John at Ed's, took it on enthusiastically. And then we lost a couple of managers that just, argued. They'd argue with Fred or Gino and the RSP people, like, it's too much to count. It's this and that. And now it's just part of the culture.
And that's the habits, right?
Yeah,
like when you go for a run in the morning, it's too far, right? It's too hard. I can't do it. And then you do it, and then you do it, and then you do it, and then you do it some more. Yeah. And before you know it, you don't even realize you're running anymore. It just becomes a part of the habit. You train yourself. And it's the same exact thing. But you have to have the discipline and the desire and the want to do better. And when you do the hard things, good things happen. Yeah. And I think another thing I really want, you also compared Restaurant Systems Pro to Restaurant 365. It's a lot of people try to sell best in class or the latest automation features. And I think it's really important that you understand that I think there's a lot of, I don't know. I see the power in automation, and I'm not saying all automation is bad, but I do think it's really important that, and Restaurant Systems Pro has automations too. But the point I'm trying to make is that doing the hard thing makes you understand holistically what's actually going on. When you automate the process, when you don't look at the numbers, when you're not doing the thing, like you're more detached, and your awareness of what's going on isn't as good. And I think it's really important to recognize that like we in life are, especially today with the AI, are going to be sold this lie of the road to success is in automation and conveniences. I'll
tell you another thing that I think the shiny things distract us sometimes, and a lot of times a really cool looking user interface would be like, oh, this must be better, you know. And RSP, I love it. Again, I'm sitting here singing its praises. It's pretty basic looking and everything. They didn't put the money, and they put the money in the system, and there's not a lot of shiny, bells and whistles are there, but the guts of the thing,
Yeah.
and the way it works. I mean, you can't argue. I mean, I can't argue. They could actually put me on the advertising because I could.
And I think that's,
again, talk about what a change it made.
This is an example of when I say things like marketing is the bane of human existence. And it's because what companies with a budget will do is they will create things that'll make it look shiny and flashy and pretty. And as humans, we are susceptible to that flash. And we will go with a company that has the bigger budget to influence the media and to pay for the marketing to say that we are better. And then whoever has the power, whoever has the money, controls the narrative. And that's how it goes from the beginning of time.
The reason I wasn't fooled by that or really just overly attracted to that, because that's the business I had been running.
Right.
Was the Peacock.
Yep.
Looked great too. Looked great from the outside or whatever. It's just rotten on the inside. And I'm not saying that's what those guys were, but I was aware. It was like, it doesn't matter. What matters is the system, the systems that whoever I chose we're going to implement, and then the personal attention.
Yes. I was waiting for you to say, I was like, you're missing something.
Well, no, I said it earlier because Fred, man, anytime I called and we had, there were a couple of things on some tax stuff that we hadn't taken advantage of, and he pointed that out and ended up making a huge difference. And then he came in for our leadership retreat that we have once a year, 2 days. I mean, on his own dime. I offered to pay him, and he held 3 different sessions, on leadership and, culture and things like that. And,
yeah, there's nobody I know who is more generous with their time as a CEO than Fred Langley. I don't know how he does it, but I will say this too. He is making himself available at Restaurant Unstoppable Network every other week for an hour, just to answer all profitability and system questions. Yeah. We're not there to push Restaurant Systems Pro. We're there to help you with the things that Restaurant Systems Pro does in your business, i.e. getting better at costing, purchasing, budgeting, inventory, all those things that move the needle. He's there to coach you on.
I want to clarify one more time. I am not here to sell Restaurant Systems Pro at all, because I know it sounds like, but it's just, that's what made this. I mean, the difference, because I'm sitting here 2.5 years after you and I first spoke, and I was in one position then, and I'm in another position now, and 25% of the reason for that, if not a little more, is Restaurant Systems Pro. So I'm not some kind of sellout who's here to promote these people. I'm not getting any kind of discount. I don't want anybody to think that. So it is the difference. One of the huge differences in taking us seriously from hundreds of thousands of dollars in annual losses to hundreds of thousands of dollars in net profit.
Yeah. And I spoke to Fred Langley yesterday, and, I brought to attention of what I've been feeling with your success. I started this podcast with the mission to change the world. And the way I was going to do that was by finding leaders and speaking to leaders across the country, and by getting people to open up, to share knowledge, to share perspective, to share inspiration. And I full-heartedly believe that if we can lift up and evolve and transform restaurant owners with the nature of their business can change communities. And seeing and knowing that you were a listener of my podcast for years now, knowing that you're listening to the podcast and you're taking action with what you're learning, and you're turning around and implementing these lessons, these schools of thoughts, these values into your business, and now you're creating opportunity, vertical growth for people within your organization, what you do with your nonprofit to feed Mississippi. I'm living my dream because of you, and I know there are more people like you out there, man, that that gives me the fire under my ass to keep going, and I want to I want to share that with you because I mean it and it's true, any thoughts?
Well,
I wasn't sure if you're taking your glasses off to cry or clean them, or what was going on over there.
I'm not having to read numbers anymore, so I can take them off. The headphones were squeezing them a little bit, but I see you well. I can see far.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm very honored that you said that, but I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I mean, I'm going to be dead and gone one day. I think I'm going to make 100. I'm shooting for 100. I'm 63 now, so I think I got 37 more
Don't
years.
jinx it,
in
man.
me.
You got this big wooden table in front of you. I'll knock on it.
So, I'm gonna be gone, and my family will miss me for a little while, and then that's gonna be it. So I think in terms of, I don't want to sound too, grandiose or spiritual or cosmic or whatever, but why are we here? And I try to prioritize things. I didn't always prioritize my life in a healthy manner. And when my daughter was born 27, almost 28 years ago, I started prioritizing things, differently. I had looked for fun in a lot of the wrong places for a long time. And when I started prioritizing my faith, family, my friends, my food, and then fun, in those order. And we probably covered that in the other one. So anybody wants me to hear detail, or I call it the 5 F's, and I write about it a lot. But, those kind of priorities and family is the most important to me. I got a lot of job titles, restaurateur, all the things, but dad is really the most important job title I'll ever have, and mine are still in their 20s, and it's still the most important thing. But for like extra table and feeding people and all those kind of things, I mean, I've always just felt like I need to do something. I need to leave something. I don't want to sound altruistic at all, because I'm going to tell you, for my first 40 years, I was materialistic. I was self-serving. I was any negative, character defect you can name that starts with selfish, self-centered, self-seeking. Man, that was me. I was into consumerism. I was into materialism, and it was really having kids that changed that for me. And so I'm not some Zen-like creature at all. I'm ADHD, hyperactive like crazy. But
like 90% of the other owners listening to this.
Yeah, there you go. There's my peeps.
Yeah,
squirrel.
Yeah.
But I want to do things to make a difference, and that's not a normal. I don't think I was born with the need to do that. I was born a very selfish, self-centered person, and somewhere along the way, and I guess it was kids. I like to have respect from my professional peers. And I like to have respect from, our guests and customers in town. But where the respect means the most to me is with my family. If my family respects me, then I'm like, I've done a thing. I can remember, I told my son this the other day. He's 27 now. But I can remember my mother-in-law, his grandmother was in town visiting, and she had taken him to lunch. And he was about 10 or 12. I don't know. And they came back home, and he ran up to his room or did whatever he did. And she was just sitting there talking and really not even making much of a point. And probably if I asked her today, she wouldn't even remember she said this. But she said, and you could tell they had conversations to back the statement up. And she said, that boy loves his daddy, man. And so it just told me he had been just bragging on me or doing whatever. And I'm going to tell you, I mean, there's some accolades over there. There's a Emmy Award. There's all sorts of things over there in the office. That thing, I mean, that's gold right there. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't get better than that.
Yeah. I mean, I love what you're sharing. There's a couple things. I was taking notes earlier. I don't know if you saw me trying to keep up with everything that was coming out, and I had to get it out onto my Word document here before I lost it all. But you talked about the 4 Ps, your
5 Fs.
Well, the 5 Fs, but not the 4. Sorry. You talked about the 5 Fs, but you also talked about the 4 things that helped this year.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know
yeah,
why
yeah.
I'm calling them Ps.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Maybe
okay.
I'm mixing my
the
marketing
the
terms
C-suite,
up. C-suite, coach, RSP, and people.
Yeah.
Right. Talking about working with your coach, Donald Burns, past guest in the show, host of the Restaurant Coach podcast.
Right.
He, it sounds like, I see traction over your left shoulder.
Right.
And I'm wondering because when you talk about culture,
you'll see
you
all
talk about
Donald's
coach.
books down there. I've got
Yep.
tons of them. I pass them out to my team.
Yeah, he's got a few books out. Your restaurant sucks. Your restaurant still sucks.
Your
The
restaurant
warrior
culture sucks.
Yeah,
And I represented all of those sentiments when I started working with him.
and really the sentiment behind that message is that behind every great restaurant's a great person. If your restaurant isn't great, it's not because your restaurant sucks. It's because you suck. Yeah. Your restaurant is a reflection of you and your values and your dedication. Your restaurant will serve as a mirror to who you are, right? And I think that's the sentiment in his books, that the work doesn't start on your restaurant. The work starts with you. And I share that sentiment. That if you want to be a great restaurant owner, if you want to own great restaurants, be a great person. Yeah. Put the energy into you. And just like you owned your shit, and you said you took complete ownership, and you have to work on yourself, and then it will ripple out. But people will only follow you in the direction you take yourself, right? Agreed. So, but I see traction over here. Are you an EOS company?
You know how I know about EOS is listening to you. Okay. And I've done research, and I have not read that book yet, but I've gotten on ChatGPT and had it summarized. I have to do audio books.
Yeah, audio.
Yeah,
it's
I buy most cookbooks, which is all that.
I was looking. I was like, I think those are all cookbooks.
That's about half of what I have. So I collect cookbooks I can read because it's short and I can keep my attention. Long form books, I get those for the managers and for the leadership team to pass out. And I have, my phone is filled with audiobooks, and mainly these days I'm into audiobooks and podcasts. Yep. And that's, maybe I heard of Donald Burns. This is crazy. I'm just realizing this too. I probably heard your interview with him, just like I heard your interview with Fred. Yep. Or talking about RSP.
David Scott Peters, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I heard him too. Yeah, but no, I came over. He had already gone. I'm Team Fred. Yeah. And so maybe it was just you were talking about advertising. You were talking about a bunch of different things. There was a payroll thing, and there was something else. And I'd look into those companies. But the Restaurant Systems Pro came at a time that I really needed that, and that's when I was looking at that in 365. But I bet it was your interview with Donald Burns, and he was talking about, because I remember thinking the book was called Your Restaurant Sucks, and I was like, I know, I know it does, and so I read the book on audio like in a day. I was coming from somewhere. And it connected. It was like, that's me, that's me, that's me. And I immediately got on Amazon and ordered like 6 or 8, and I was passing them out to the C-suite. You got to read this, you got to read this. And then I started listening to his podcast, and I bought the other books, passed those out, listened to them. And then I called him one day, and again, that's again, it was RSP, it was the C-suite, it was the team getting together, but then Donald Burns being my restaurant coach. Yeah. And at first he was just coaching me. And we do 30 minutes on Mondays now. And after about 2 of those, I said, oh, I got to get you on with my leadership team, with my C-suite. And so we meet for an hour on Friday, later today. We'll meet an hour with him, and then we alternate. The next week it'll be the leadership team, which is all of the GMs, all of the KMs, some assistants, and the C-suite, and we're working on stuff. And what I love about that guy, he's frank, and it's having to answer to somebody. I know that call's coming up at 4:30 on Monday, and I was like, man, I hope I should have done what I was supposed to do. But what I get as much benefit out of, and what our team gets benefit out of, is just the content on his website and the tools and the resources and all of those things. It goes in deep, and he's a pretty flashy guy. And I think some of my team was like, oh man, who's the dude with the red glasses and the image and stuff. And we brought him down this year for our leadership retreat. And we go out to a place, a very nice lodge out in the middle of nowhere. And we're all there. This year I made a change. based on a friend of mine's suggestion. It's always the GMs and the KMs and the C-suite. But a friend of mine, what he does, and I emulated it this year, because we're always griping, man, we need a bench. We need a better bench. We're growing. We're doing all these restaurants. And what we have in the company are so many talented team members who are going to be the next one up, but we weren't including them in the leadership retreat.
Right.
So this year we had like 30 that we brought into the leadership retreat. Donald Burns flew in, and he led the thing. And the people that were kind of skeptical about him, that were like some of those who were most skeptical, once we got through that whole thing, were like the most engaged people. And he's just got a simple process. It's a 3P thing. It's people, product, process. And so many people get that backwards. We were getting it backwards because you gotta get the people in place.
Right.
You can't do anything.
You're only as good as the people you're surrounding
And again,
yourself
like I
with.
said at the first, all problems are people problems. He taught me that. All problems are people problems. And then I always take it a little further. All successes are people's successes and not mine, but the team's success. And so and that's how we adjusted our culture, because our culture was rotten. You can say, it was after COVID, but before that, it was rotten in a different way. It was full of hubris.
Yeah.
We had a lot of hubris in our company because we thought we were this fine dining restaurant. We got all these awards with this and that. And again, we weren't making any money.
Yeah.
So we had all this false pride, but once you take care of the people and the culture, and until you do, you can't fix anything else.
I really do think that's a disease in the industry, though. I don't think you're alone with that. And I think it's common. I think we all focus like this. So much of this industry is about image, not the realities. It's not about numbers. It's not about benchmarks. And that's why I'm very intentional about the questions I ask, to get people to kind of change the values of the industry, to get people to start sharing. Like, if you want to be proud of something, be proud of the money you're making, and not because you can go buy new homes and nice cars, and because of the opportunity and the impact you can create for others.
Yeah, 100%.
It's what you choose to do with that. But that's the mindset that I want to echo. But back to this book I see over your shoulder, Traction. You were talking about the process that you're going through with Donald Burns, and
that's sitting there because of you again. By the way.
Well, I mean, you open it next.
Yeah. Well, I've got it on my phone.
Yeah, definitely listen to it, because they get into EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system, and I think that there are some parallels with what Donald Burns is doing with you and what that book teaches, which is this idea of, really communication, right? It's this really important thing. Like, in Donald Burns talks about people, product, and process. And what EOS is, the entrepreneurial operating system, is a process for growth. A process for communicating where we are, where we're going, and how we're going to get there, and who's responsible for what. So you have your VTO, vision traction organizer, which says, where would you want to be in 5 years? Okay, where do we have to be in 1 year to be one step closer to our 5-year goal? Okay, what do we have to do this quarter to be one step closer to our 1 year goal that will get us to our 5-year, and then this month, this week? And it forces you to have those meetings, weekly meetings. You can't miss them. And I think that you said that you have weekly, monthly, and quarterly meetings with Donald. Did I hear that right? I have a weekly, once a week, and then that's Monday. And then on Friday is a weekly meeting that alternates. 1 week it'll be the C-suite. The next week it's all the leadership team, including the C-suite and me. So I have 2 meetings a week with him. My C-suite has a meeting every week with him, and then the leadership team meets every other week. So I'm going to share the L10.
We do a lot.
I'm going to share the L10 structure, though.
Okay.
Which the L10 structure is the level 10 meeting that they share in EOS. And the idea behind that, you first start by everybody goes around and they share a personal win and a business win. So you start off with a good thing, something you're grateful for, a win. Good news. And then you go through the scorecard. And the scorecard is all of your key KPIs, all the things that you're measuring. And if you're on target or off target, if you're off target, you'll drop it down. And then you drop it down. And this is all in the book too.
I'm taking notes.
And then as you're going through, I think after your key KPIs, your scoreboard, you go down to basically rocks, or no, I think maybe it's issues. And then
remember the rock
rocks.
part, yeah.
Yeah, and the rocks are basically each individual's goal that quarter. Are you on goal with your rocks? You get 3 rocks. Each person gets 3 rocks. Are you on target from where you said you would be last week, basically? Yes or no? No, drop it down. So then everything gets dropped down as you're going through this to identify, discuss, solve, where everybody in the room gets together to help you. If it was a no, to help you overcome whatever it is that is getting in your way. You brainstorm it, and then you say, this is my goal next week. Maybe your goal was too big last week, which is why you didn't achieve it, right? And I think that's the standard, and there might be more to it that I missed, and I'm kind of going off memory right now. So if I missed anything, if you're an EOS company, I mean, does that sound familiar with what you do with Donald? Is it similar? Are the meetings similar?
Yeah. No. I think so at all. I love what I wrote down. We have a weekly. We just had it this morning. Thursdays at 8:30. We have just the leadership team go over budgets from the previous week and we go over KPIs, and each one reads, what their sales were, what their voids were, void amount, average check, what that was, and it's graded against what's in the budget. And so if it's over, we talk about. We look at we look at labor, hourly labor. We look at overall labor, cost of goods, and then we look at prime cost. And every GM or a representative from that restaurant goes over all that and talks about it to the group. And sometimes it's all right. We got to get that straight. But sometimes a GM from one is what we did to get that void count down as we started doing this. So it's this synergistic thing that goes on with that. But what we do when we start that meeting is we have our core values, our mission statement, our purpose, and somebody reads those. And so we start the meeting with that. And what I'm going to add, what I wrote down, what you said, I love the idea. Everybody share a personal win and everybody share a professional win before we even get into the numbers. And Burns got me. So I always had core values and I always had a mission statement.
Were you living them?
No, and I wasn't communicating them.
Yeah.
I wasn't communicating. I mean, they didn't know our core values are hospitality, quality, consistency, cleanliness, and community. And we were living the community. And most of the time we were living the hospitality. We were poor on consistency. We were up and down on quality. And we were sketchy on cleanliness and good practices there. And, it's because nobody ever heard. Now it's everywhere. Yeah, it's everywhere. It's all in our kitchen. All the managers have cards with the mission and the core values on. That's a whole Donald Burns thing. And so here's the thing that hit me again, and I think I said it earlier, but I'm gonna say it again. The reason I know about EOS, the reason I'm on RSP, the reason I'm with Donald Burns, and also the reason I know about I think it's the 15% profit thing or whatever, profit first.
Yep.
Profit first is because it's all from your show.
Yeah, thank you.
So if you're a restaurateur out there, you're maybe just getting in the business or you're just getting into podcasts, this one here will lead you
that means a lot.
So not only did you lead me to these other things, other people, really by way of you steering me, not even knowing you were doing it, to other people, you led our company to a much. So when it comes to, again, this has just hit me as I'm saying it. When it comes to changing the world and your mission, you've changed our world.
Thank you, man. That means a lot.
Without even knowing you did.
Yeah, and that's one of the hard things. Not to turn this too much on me, but one of the hard things about the work I do is I see face to face. I got to talk to people face to face, and I love that. But when I publish this, when this goes out into the universe, I don't get to see the result of my work. And as somebody who grew up working in restaurants, living in restaurants as a child, and like the immediate response, the immediate sense of approval that you get working in the industry by seeing the happy faces. Every day, I want to remind you to take gratitude for that, because when you start not being able to see the fruits of your labor in terms of like whether or not it's actually catching traction, I mean, you start to miss that, so by hearing this from you, it means a lot to me. Thank you.
Cool.
So two things you mentioned about getting your culture, like losing your culture, that came to my mind. One, Hertz Schulze, I think he was the CEO of the Ritz-Carlton. They would go over their 26 standards of excellence. At the beginning of every shift, they would cover one, and they'd get to go to the next one, until they got to the 26th one, and they'd go back to one. And what they would do is they would identify a time where they saw that happen, and they'll talk about it. They'll find somebody on the team who did that thing, who lived that value, and they would talk about it. And what that's called is a ritual. And that is something that we hear about from the founder of Mendocino Farms, Mario Del Pero, that, the greatest cultures in the world have language and they have rituals. And you have to build rituals around your core values and your vision and your mission so they surface constantly. And the best time to do that is during the weekly and monthly meetings. So just that, when I heard those things, I kind of it cemented it for me.
Yeah, we're doing that, but we didn't think of it in those terms. But yeah, we don't cover 26, but we cover.
Well, I mean, yeah, you don't
cover the 5 core values and the mission.
And for you, it's like whatever those things are. You don't have to do it all in one day, but you choose. Like you go from we're going to cover the first standard. The next day you cover the second standard. So you kind of constantly are resurfacing it. And anyway, I mean, I always feel compelled to share that. What up, Unstoppables? I have a very special offer for you that could potentially change your life. So listen up. Restaurant Systems Pro wants to make 2025 your best year ever. And here's what they're going to do to help. When you sign up for Restaurant Systems Pro through February of 2025, they will do your 2024 books for you at zero charge. Nothing to you, no cost to you to do your books. Plus, you're going to get all of the Restaurant Systems Pro profitability systems. So this is such a no-brainer deal. If you've heard of Restaurant Systems Pro in the past, listening to the podcast, and you've been interested, now is the time to sign up. Head to restaurantunstoppable.com/RSP or click the link below and make 2025 your best year ever. Back to some of the other things that you talked about. I wrote down EOS. I wanted to talk about that. You also closed a restaurant.
Right.
And I was hoping that would come out. That's actually where we recorded 2.5 years ago.
You know what? Yeah. So you and I sat in a room in a restaurant in Ridgeland, Mississippi, which is a suburb of Jackson, the capital. And we were there 2 days before it opened and recorded that interview. And I closed that restaurant September of this year. So it was about 2 years, really. And here's a weird thing about me is and I think, because I've been in recovery now for almost 42 years in May, from drug addiction and alcoholism. And so when you're doing the recovery principles and all things like that, then the failures become lessons, and you learn how you learn how to create a life without regret. And as it says in some 12-step programs, we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. So what that does in a business sense, if you take it from my recovery in a business sense, I have this weird thing where I don't mind at all talking about failure at all. I mean, it's very freeing to me to be just 100%, don't cover it up. So I am happy to sit here and talk about all the mistakes we made and all the mistakes I made in that venture. And it was probably one of the absolute best business deals and negotiations I ever made. And consequently, probably one of the worst business decisions I ever made. But I think I based it on sound business principles. So what it was, there was a kind of a regional chain from Illinois called Biaggi's that was in the nicest lifestyle center in Mississippi. It's got an Apple store. It's got all the things.
Was there a Rolex store in that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really nice center.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful building in an out parcel there, and the Italian restaurant had they had a bunch around Illinois maybe, and planted this one in Jackson, in the Jackson area, I don't know, 15 years ago. And the plan was to go to Baton Rouge and Little Rock and Birmingham and Mobile, kind of, and they never did. And then COVID hit them really hard. And so they were ready to get out. So the deal we made was a great day. I mean, it was basically instant restaurant. Tables, chairs, forks, knives. I mean, instant walk-in, instant restaurant. Signed a lease with no personal guarantee. And they put in a substantial financial kicker. So, I mean, it's like negotiate a great deal. I mean, how can you lose? I'll tell you how you can lose. It's hard to hire in Jackson, Mississippi in normal times. Post-COVID, it's almost impossible. And it's different. And I know I'm not one to use that as an excuse, but it's just there's so much of the pie to get. And so my thought was, it's going to be hard to hire in this environment. And we had this tight window of 2 weeks we had to switch over. And it had something to do with the other leases in the center and things like this. So I was like, man, we're not going to be able to hardly hire, period. So let's just keep the team that was already on there. The team that was working in that restaurant. Because, I mean, the restaurant was running, the numbers were okay, but I'm like, we'll put our systems in. We'll bring our culture in. And probably a sound business decision again. And what I learned, and, at 63, I'm still learning in this business after 40 some odd years, is that you can inherit someone else's team, but you're also going to inherit their culture.
Right. And where do we start? People?
And the culture, people. And the culture was rotten there. They hadn't had a GM in 4 years. And I brought in all my heavyweights to train. I brought in a guy who was Emerald's executive chef at one of his restaurants in the Panhandle of Florida to train and get through the honeymoon for the month. And there's a guy named Joseph Heidelberg that has been my prep cook at Tabella, our Italian restaurant, since day one. So he's been there 13 years. We brought him up, and I can remember he was in with the prep crew back there, and he was showing them how to make our marinara. And it was like they turned their back. I mean, literally, I'm not just saying, in a figurative way. They literally turned their back on him. And it's like, you ain't going to teach me anything, kind of attitude. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a problem. And I can remember the guy making bread. We can do it in about an hour and a half. We make really good focaccia. I don't know if you had some last night, but
trying to avoid the bread.
Good for you.
I broke my rule this morning and I had that croissant. And I don't know if you've been able to hear my stomach during this episode. It's not because of the quality of the croissant. It's because I'm gluten intolerant. Okay. And I still was like, I got to try this thing.
Right.
And
well, I'm glad
every gurgle has been well worth it. That croissant.
So the guy making the bread it's crazy. He'd work for about 20 minutes. Then he'd go take a smoke break for 15 minutes, and then come back in, he'd work about 30 minutes, and then he'd leave it's just crazy. Yeah. Like in any normal time you go, all right, thank you, this really ain't going to work, but we had this 2 week to perform. And so my mistake, what I should have done is taken the financial hit and the penalty we were going to have to pay to this is the lesson I learned. At the time, I thought my thought was very pure, and I'm going to bring them around. I can win these people over. We're gonna bring them on and train them, and we'll get them up, and we'll get the attitude right and the culture right. And it just you just can't do it.
Yeah. Were you using Restaurant Systems Pro there too?
Yes, but again, we couldn't. It was hard to get it implemented. But here's the thing. I mean, we had a honeymoon, man. We blew it out. We were doing 100, 120 a week. And when the people we brought in, the ringers were there, it was good. But after they left, and the timing was bad for me because, I worked 4 months a year overseas. And so I just kind of left Jared, the COO, in a bad shape. It was bad culture from the start. And we started, pardon my French, but we just kind of shit the bed. And we never could recover. And so, again, I'm not blaming the team at all. They were who they are. And they went on, and eventually 6 months, a year in, we were able to get a new team, keep some of the leadership, and we got better. But the damage had been done, and we couldn't recover. And so I just cut bait last December. And so the lesson I learned, again, I have no regrets because I learned from the failure. Then it was failure.
Yeah. And I would take that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, well, I'm saying the lesson I learned is that what I should have done is maybe the harder, which turned out probably would have been the easier thing to do, is, we've got this 2-week window. We're just going to have to renegotiate that. These people aren't right. We got to get the people right. We need to let everybody go, re-interview, some will stay, and then if it takes another month, then we're going to take a month. And if we have to pay some kind of performance penalty because we didn't get opened up on time, then we're just going to have to pay that penalty. Because, what we did is we foregoed, which is not a word, I'm sorry. We gave up $120,000 weeks, which we, would have settled down to probably into the 90s after the honeymoon, to end up, towards the end, we were doing high 30s or something. Oh, wow. It was a terrible restaurant, and we closed it. And here's the thing. I know how to run an Italian restaurant. I spend 3 months a year in Italy working and in restaurants with chefs and other stuff. And I've got an Italian restaurant here in Hattiesburg I had for 13 years. So it's not that I didn't know Italian food or Italian restaurant. It's that I didn't have the right people in place.
Right. And when some of the thoughts going through my mind listening to you talk, it's when we talk about scale and what I've learned about scale. If I'm opening a restaurant tomorrow and I'm looking to scale, people and cash flow determine scale. Mm-hmm. And it's when you get to your point, the bench, when you build your bench and that, like, if I don't go open a new house or, build a new house to move people into, then those people are going to go to someone else's house. Because people, one of the human needs is growth. They have to feel like they're growing. And if there's no room for growth, those people are going to go somewhere. So you're in the business of producing people. And then when you are bursting at the seams because you are full of good people, that's when you go and you open the next thing, but you bring your people with you. And it's that, and back to, supporting Donald Burns' sentiment, you start with the people and then you reverse engineer. Maybe it's a person like a sous chef that has a vision or a talent for a product. You build people, then you build a product. And then once you get the people and the product dialed in, the processes come thereafter once you dial it in.
And they almost come, their processes are almost there once you've taken care of those things. If they're not there, they're easier to implement. And that's where we are now. We're a year and a half. I don't know how long we've been on restaurant systems. It's probably 2 years, maybe 2.5. I don't know, maybe 2.5, because I think I was just about to get on when you and I interviewed. We had a record year. We had a record year in every concept. Every concept was up. Prime cost everywhere was down. Culture is there. So, it's not that I didn't know how to run restaurants. I didn't know how to do it effectively and to delegate properly.
Well, you need the systems in order to delegate.
Yeah,
and again,
100%.
That's what, when you have robust systems like Restaurant Systems Pro, it's that level of rigidity and like, here's how you do it, and just go through the steps every day, and then you got to get the numbers back to. And there's a point I wanted to make when you're using EOS and you're going through that weekly meeting, the level 10 meeting, and you get to the scorecard. When you get Restaurant Systems Pro data that you can push into that, and you're able to manage those numbers at such a detailed and precise way, things just start to move. The needle starts to move.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of people out there like we were, who were kind of just mom and popping it after they've opened a few concepts, and you get to a point where you just can't run it like that anymore. But you can. If you're a single unit operator, and you got a small group, you're going to be better with systems and following all that stuff. But you can kind of mom and pop it and get by.
Yeah.
But once you start growing, and that's one thing you hit on it a second ago, is one thing we've been good at over the years is creating opportunities for our people. I hired 3 managers when we opened in '87. Hadn't hired a manager since. Really, we just promote from within. Steve Andrews at Tabello started with me as a prep cook in 1987. And in 2011, I handed him a third of the Italian restaurant. He's over there running it right now, so, and that's where we're developing a bench now, because we've got these 3 or 4 units we're about to open in the next 2 years. And, we're able to develop some strong leaders now.
One more thought on Enzo before we wrap up, or bring it to the next thing I want to talk about before we wrap up. You made Jared a partner in Enzo.
I gave him 50%.
Yeah. Was that tough for him? This is the first business that he had equity in.
Yeah, it was the second. We had a project in Fondren, a neighborhood in Jackson. It was a big, huge bowling alley, movie theater, restaurant, bar, and I negotiated a really good deal there. And I gave him half of I gave it to him. Didn't. I grew up as a man I admire here in town. He's got a lot of he's a very brilliant guy. He's got a lot of country wisdom. He always said, "Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered." And so I don't mind giving up. But the unusual thing about Jared is he's kind of okay with that. He's kind of not. He's kind of mission focused and business focused. And if he has a stake, he's good. He's not. He needs money. He's got a family, but I don't think he's money driven. I think he's results driven. And so I don't think it connected with him. Like it would some people. It was like, yeah, that's kind of nice.
Yeah. But, my thought is, you want to create opportunity for these people. And the way you're doing it, bringing your director of operations, this person, like you said, you wouldn't be who you are without Jared. So you have to recognize that and reward that. To have this now twice where you try to bring him in as a partner and it doesn't work out. Is there a level, do you worry about him being discouraged?
Well, we talk about, one thing I have become better at, maybe just, I don't think Donald coached this or anybody else coached it. I think I was just so bad at it for so long, is communication. I grew up, my family, I love my family. And, my mom was a single mom growing up, and my brother and I, but we were not, we didn't communicate in a healthful way. And one thing I worked on last year was candor. I listened to Gary Vaynerchuk a lot. He and I were on I spoke at Will Guidera's hospitality conference a couple of years ago, and I didn't even know who Gary Vaynerchuk was at the time. And he was on the dais as well, and he spoke after I spoke, thankfully. I didn't have to follow him. But he talks about candor a lot. And he references a book called Radical Candor. Yeah. And it didn't hit me until then. It's like, man, I have never really been comfortable being candorous with people, ever. Part of it, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and this or that. And I take it down. I was calling it communication, but it's really candor. And there's a respectful way to utilize candor, especially in business, but in all relationships. And I was, the example I'll give you is that I'd be in here with some of the leadership talking about so-and-so, man, that guy's just not doing it. You're going to have to let him go. He did this the other day. He dropped the ball on this. And then I'd see the guy in the restaurant go, oh man, keep up the good work or something. I mean, just total, you just can't do that. Yeah. And then a week later, somebody's firing him. And it's like, hey, Robert came through last week, told me keep up the good work. And so.
What was the sentiment from his message and how to do that right? How to give candor right and the benefit of candor?
I aligned 100% on so many things with him, other than the size of his bank account's much bigger than mine. But, I mean, when he talks, man, I'm like, that's me. And the candor that he speaks about that he was not effective at is the same exact. So I can just tell you about me because it's the same. I don't know specifically what he said, but all I know is that. And so I just had trouble sitting someone down and being frank in a business manner. and it has something to do with my upbringing, maybe my mom, or
I think it's
don't
Western
know.
culture.
Maybe.
I think
Yeah.
we kind of don't get our.
I don't want to be
privilege.
rude. It's Southern manners. I think. I grew up with my mother, my grandmother, everybody lived by etiquette and all the stuff, and maybe it was just drilled in my head early on. You don't say. I would, and it's not rude things to people. You're just being frank with them and giving them an opportunity to know where they stand with you. And so 2025, I worked on, I don't make resolutions, New Year's resolutions or whatever. I just try to get a little better every day. But there were two things I was focusing on. And one in my personal life was to have more gratitude. And I've always been a pretty grateful person, but I don't think I expressed it enough. And so I'm the kind of guy, like I did this the other day. I was riding down the road. I thought, man, that guy, he's a friend of mine. I love the way he parented, and I parroted, how he parented. And he was a big influence on me. I was like, and so I just call. When I have those thoughts today, I call instantly. I say, hey, Cliff, it's Robert. I know this is going to sound weird, but I've gotten to a stage in my life when I think of something, I want to just let you know. I want you to know what a difference you made in me. Maybe you don't know this. Maybe I've never expressed it to you, but the way you parented your kids, you were a mentor to me without even knowing it. And I took so much from you, and it obviously worked, and blah, blah. I'll just have those kind of conversations today. And so gratitude was the thing I worked on personally, and then candor and having respectful candor and polite candor was the thing I worked on in business. And I've done it, and it's so much better because you've got to have good communication. And I think this started to come back around with maybe Jared and me and how we communicate. And I think we're very upfront and honest. And when you can put egos aside in business, it makes all the difference in the world. Yeah. Because what you do is you focus on the business.
Yeah.
Everything is about the business, and I'm not criticizing you personally. I'm criticizing the performance.
Yes. Don't correct the person, correct the process.
That's it.
And that's the power of having solid processes. If the person isn't doing the standard, if they're not following the process, you say, hey, appreciate the effort. Here's how we do it. Here's why we do it that way. And we would appreciate it if you stick to the process. So you're not correcting the person, you're correcting the process. And I think the what you said, the power of seeing someone, it's the next most important thing behind your physiological needs: food, shelter, warmth. And I think beyond that, you need security. The next most important thing up that ladder of human needs, according to Maslow,
Right.
is being seen. It's that important.
I like the hierarchy.
It's that important. And I'm going to share a quote from the great Kanye West. That's debatable. If you admire somebody, you should go ahead and tell them. People never get the flowers while they can still smell them.
Yeah.
And I think that that's such a powerful way to make someone's day.
Yeah.
To make an impact in someone's life is to let them know what they're good at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's important to me to do that. I don't necessarily maybe I do it to let them know that they just impacted me. Maybe if they feel good afterwards, that's a benefit of doing it. But it's important to me, to let someone know.
I'm loving the conversation. We're already almost at an hour and a half of just talking, man. And before we wrap up, I do want to talk about, I think that it's important for me to talk about the restaurant industry, but I think there's ancillary opportunity. Mm-hmm. There's the restaurant industry food and beverage spins so much other possibility. Yeah. And I think sometimes if you're young and you love food, the only path you see is being a chef or a restaurant owner. But you've taken your passion for food and experience, and you've taken it, and you have another business that we haven't really spoken about, mm-hmm. which is your
Extra Table,
which is your nonprofit. We did get was it Molly?
Martha,
thank you. We did get Martha on the show. We talked about that. But you do tours. Yeah, that's a business. You get paid for that, right?
Yeah. That's crazy.
What are those tours? I mean, you're gone 4 months out of the year, aren't you?
I'll give you the quickest version on why does this guy spend 4 months a year in Europe hosting, Americans and Southerners, a lot of Southerners, but people from all over the country. The quickest version I can tell you on why a restaurateur is doing something like that is, I have books. Books I've written, there's like 15 of them or whatever. Well, when in 2011, I did the best thing I will have ever done and will ever do is I flew my family at the time, my 10-year-old son and my 14-year-old daughter, my wife. We flew to Sweden, bought a Volvo, spent the next 6 months in 17 countries, in 72 cities, on 2 continents. And it was an amazing journey with the family. The 10 months we were in Italy, I flew over my kind of collaborator at the time, a guy named Wyatt Waters, who's a watercolor artist. And we had done 2 books together, kind of coffee table cookbooks with his art and my recipes to that time. And I flew him over to Italy, and we spent 10 months really from the southernmost tip of Sicily to the Alps working on this book. He painted, I ate. And so when we're back in America and this trip of mine was over, we're on the book tour going around signing books and doing the promotional thing that you do. People who I write a syndicated weekly column too for the last 26 years. It's every week. I've never missed a week. People who read that, or people who were on my social media or followed me in one way or another, you're signing books and they would go, oh man, I'd love to meet, Dario Cecchini and Panzano that you wrote about, or I'd love to go to that little restaurant in Tavernelli and meet Paolo, or I'd love to see that fountain that you painted. And, and at first you just think it's people making conversation while you sign their book. But eventually, man, I kept hearing it. And finally I was like, man, I think people want me to take them to Italy. So I figured I'd do it once. And so I made a Facebook post. This is like 2016. I made a Facebook post. And I said, okay, I can take 25 people because there were 2 villas that we stayed in Tuscany, and that's how many they held. So I made a Facebook post, and in like 2 hours it filled up. And then there was a waiting list. Then the waiting list got a waiting list. And so I took those people, and then after 2 or 3 trips, they were saying, hey, where are we going next? And so I said, well, Venice is the most unique city in the world, and Bologna is the food capital of Italy, and Milan's awesome at Christmas. So we did Venice, Bologna, Milan. Then we did Rome, Amalfi, Naples. The whole time we had a TV show called Palate to Palate on public broadcasting. Did 5 seasons of that. 3 of those were, one was Tuscany, one was northern Italy, one was southern. And it just grew. And so since 2016, in groups of 25, I've taken over 1,300 people to now Europe, not just Italy. A cool thing about that, like this past spring, I was in England. We did England, Scotland with a group, and there were 2 ladies. It was like their 7th trip with me. Most everybody else, it was at least their 5th. And so it's just like a bunch of friends traveling with each other. And it's something I never planned on. It's something that, I was just open to the opportunity. And it has, it's been just one of the joys of my life. I love doing it.
Is that profitable?
It's extremely profitable, and, and it's just fun. I knew I would love turning people. There's something in me I've always loved. Like I get the new 45 record when I was a kid, and I go, oh, you got to hear this. You got to hear this. Or later in life, I'd go to a new restaurant. You got to try this out. Something in me loves turning people on to things. And so if you're in Florence and you see Michelangelo's David for the first time, you can only have one first time with the David. But if I'm with other people, I get to relive my first time through their first time. And so I love doing that. But the one thing I never expected is I knew I would love turning people on to things because I love doing. I never knew I would make such good friendships, and I made again like that.
Well, you're a promoter. I mean, you're adding value. You're going to these places. You're finding these companies. I'm sure you're promoting, or products you're promoting, and you're bringing droves of people there.
Yeah.
When you can be a person of value to people in your network, when you can help one other person take their passion and fuel that passion with awareness of a broader audience, man. Like, yeah, you're going to have friends for life if you can do that for people.
Well, it's just fun. They're fun people to travel with. And I mean, I rarely get kind of a bad apple in the bunch. I mean, they're just all love doing it. And like this year my daughter gets married March 8th, and March 12th I head to Spain. I've got a group. It'll be my fourth time with a group in Spain to tour. I've been over to Spain before, and that's 10 nights. And then I have 3 groups in Tuscany. Those are 7-night groups. The last group is what we call Tuscany 2.0. It's people that have already been with me to Tuscany, and we go back and stay in the same place, but we do all new things. There's so much to do.
That's cool.
I've got a Holland, Belgium group of 10 nights. Those are all veterans with me.
It sounds like what you're doing is establishing programs around these locations that you, and the programs are experiences that you've curated. And I think the reason why I wanted to bring this to the conversation, because I think there's opportunity here. I know Nikki Finawatana out of Dallas, Texas, the Asian Mint. She does this with Thailand. I think there's a lot of opportunity here because people in the restaurant industry tend to be very passionate about the food, and they do a lot of research. They go to the place to do their research, to learn more. And I think that is a whole nother layer of potential earning, that to take your passion, to share your passion with other people, and to experience other people experiencing that passion for the first time. So there's money in it, and there's life in that. There's experience, like it sounds like a great lifestyle, and I think there's value there.
It's work. I mean, when I tell people I'm going to work in Europe, they kind of chuckle. Yeah, sure. It's work, man.
Yeah.
It's from about 8 in the morning till 10, 11 at night, 7 days a week, or 10, if it's so. I mean, I'm not a tour leader though. I'm a tour host. I host people in different locales. And this spring, the 5th one or the 6th one, however many, 6, I guess, is England, Scotland. So we'll be going back to England, Scotland. In the fall, I have different ones. But it's what we do, we do a deep dive into local culture, local food, local wine, local architecture, art, history, the whole thing. We do a couple of touristic things, like in Florence. I mean, you can't go and not see the David, but for the most part, we stay in a little town called Barberino Tavernelli. And the beautiful thing about that, when we're there, my group of 25 will be the only tourists anywhere near that place. And it's remote. It's in the countryside. There's so many great restaurants in that area. But within 30 minutes, we can be in the city center of Florence. 30 minutes, we can be in the city center of Siena. We're right on the edge. We're in the Chianti region. And within 5 minutes, you're in the Chianti Classico region. And so, it's an immersion into that kind of culture. And the way I run them is that when we meet and pick the people up at wherever the meeting place is, I tell them, I say, look, you've had a lot to worry about. You're worried about, am I going to make my connection? Am I bringing the right clothes? What are we going to do? Where are we going to eat? And I say, from this point forward, you have nothing to worry about. Everything's covered. And so when I say that, I mean everything's covered. We travel in Mercedes vans. We stay in 5-star villas. From that moment forward, they don't make no decisions. They spend no money, and that's why people keep coming back. I think we do cool things in cool places. I mean, we're in Sicily this past fall, and we rode 4-wheelers on Mount Etna, an active volcano, and had a picnic there. But people keep coming back because they don't have to worry about anything, and it's all hits. There are no misses.
Yeah,
I've already eliminated all the misses.
What would you average? Would you say, just like you share with your restaurant business, annual?
I'd rather not talk about that. I'll tell you all the restaurant numbers in the world, but I'd rather not talk about that.
But the point is that there's opportunity here for people.
It's worth it for me to do it. It would have to be worth it for me to take that much time away from the restaurants,
right,
and everything. And I'm happy to be, but also totally open with all the restaurant stuff.
Yeah, and thank you for doing that. And I think again, like being able to have the systems to depend on in your restaurant, the people to depend on in your restaurant, provides you the opportunity to get out of the restaurant and to focus on other projects. And I think that freedom is so powerful. Any final advice if somebody's interested in that, things like you said, it's work. It's you got to do all the programming. You're really a host, and you're coordinating. Everything's inclusive. Like any other like little nuggets like that.
Yeah, it's people. It's people again.
Yeah.
So it always goes back to I have people on the ground that help me. When I'm in Tuscany, there's a lady named Marina Mangelberg. She's Dutch, but she's lived in the Tuscany area for probably the last 25 years or more. She's a certified guide, but she's also my boots on the ground. And, I say, we'll work on a schedule. I know I want to be in Panzano on this day. I get her to make the reservation and things. So things outside of Tuscany is a guy named Jesse, and he's also Dutch, but he lives in Rome. And he's a partner in a group called Nota Bene, and they do a great job. And he's my boots on the ground for like this year, Spain, Holland, Belgium with Marina, and he'll do England, Scotland. We're going to Ireland this year, and we're doing Sicily again, I think. In addition to a lot of Tuscany, we do a lot of Tuscany, and that's kind of the entry level for people who travel with me. Because of these other trips, the way Simeon across the hall over there, who's my executive assistant, but she also books travel. And so when we introduce a new tour, like Greece is coming up and Portugal, Ireland, what we do is the people who have traveled with me most, like the 7-time people, they get the email first, and then there's about a 2-hour period, then the 6th time, then the 5th time.
So you get like the first right of refusal.
And it's usually about 5 minutes it sells out.
That's awesome.
But Tuscany is the way people can get right on.
Yeah. So I just sent an email introducing you and Nikki Finiwatana from Asia
cool.
Mint, because I think that the two of you, I think where it is like you guys could cross promote each other. Like if you're looking for the Asian experience, go with Nikki, and Nikki could sell her people to you. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So hopefully that introduction serves you both well.
Cool. Thank you.
Is there anything we have not discussed up to this point that you were hoping would come out of today's discussion?
Man, we got a lot to talk about. I'm happy to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, man. I mean, I just want to say, thank you again for sharing with me, for reaching out, and for introducing yourself, and for trusting the work I'm doing, and listening to you talk about how you're a host, and really you're just a guide to guides. You're hosting, and you're bringing people to guides who create this experience, and knowing that so much of what I've learned you've taken and applied in your business. You've identified profit first. We talked about EOS. We see the book behind you, Restaurant Systems Pro. You're paying attention to the coaches and working with them. And I think just hearing this is just kind of like reinforces this desire in me to take Restaurant Unstoppable to the next level. So I'm going to get vulnerable now, and I'm going to own my shit. Like over the past couple of years, I've been so focused on getting the content, being a student, learning and understanding. And when I started this podcast, I had this vision of like the spotlight on a path, like the path to take to be successful in the industry. And the more perspective I've gotten and talking to different people in different walks of life in the restaurant industry, I've learned that there is no one path, and there is no one destination. And there is no one path because there's no one destination. And the people taking that path have different gear, and different abilities, different strengths. So they're going to take a different path. So it's been stressful for me to try to figure out to achieve this goal of shining a light on a path, because the more I learn, the more I realize how complicated it is and how much I don't know. But hearing you today has helped me realize that I have learned something and that I can impact someone's life. And my vision for Restaurant Unstoppable going forward is to slow down as being like, I think the natural progression, the natural growth for anybody is you're the student, then you're the teacher. And I'm trying to be better about moving into that teacher role, to be the host and say, hey, come on this journey with me. And I'm gonna take you on the path I would take if I was opening our restaurant tomorrow. Here are the schools of thought: traction, EOS, profit first. Here are the people: Fred Langley, Donald Burns, whoever that might be, the real guides that can help you along the way. And here's where it makes sense to leverage this gear i.e. the tech stacks, the Restaurant Systems Pro, the Toast POS, the Ovation, the tools I would use. So if you're opening a restaurant or you're in a restaurant, and you're wondering what makes sense for you, like I will spend time with you to hear your story, to understand where you're trying to go, and I'll help put you on a path. And what we're calling this is Restaurant Unstoppable Network. And it's literally that. It's 11 years of research, gathering perspective. And I feel like emboldened to talk about this. Yeah. I mean, like I'm feeling emboldened to talk about this. And for $47 a month to start, it's really just me making time for you, the listener, to listen, and then to help connect you with these people, to create space for. And this is something I have a question to ask you when we wrap up, and if depending on how that conversation goes, I'll have a little soundbite on the end of this. But it's me basically creating space for different verticals within the restaurant industry to help my listeners connect with past guests, to offer time, a mentorship or whatever. And I think that if we can create this space to pay forward knowledge and experience, like we are here because of the people that came before us. We have followed their paths. We all stand on the shoulders of giants. Mm-hmm. And I think that if we can create space for this generation's leaders to connect with the next generation's leaders and to pay it forward, we can transform the industry. And if we can transform the industry, we can transform communities and we can change the world. And that's what I'm here to do. And hearing you has really kind of made me feel much more confident in that work that I'm about to set out on. So thank you so much. I wanted you. I see.
I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. I appreciate that.
So, anybody else? I do want to also recognize you've helped me connect with a lot of people in the South, Mississippi, Alabama. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think the Panhandle of Florida. Yeah. Anybody else that you think I should talk to before we?
Yeah, I would. The next time you're in Chicago, because Kevin Boehm you've had on twice, who's a good friend of mine. I don't think you've ever done Donnie Medea, have you?
I have, but it's been
Republican. Well, let me tell you about another guy.
Well, I'll get him back though.
Yeah, I was with Donnie. We had a quick lunch together at Frontera Grill. But there's a guy who works for Boca named Gabe Garza, and he's their chief development officer, and he is brilliant. And he is a deal maker. And I think he has a lot of restaurant experience, a lot of varied restaurant experience. He is dynamic and brilliant and has such good insight. I'm telling you, if you had him, I would listen to his interview over and over. He's a friend of mine, and we talk on the phone, and I use him for advice when I'm negotiating a deal. He is so good. He would be very interesting, and I think your audience would benefit greatly if you interviewed that guy and would be able to pick up a lot of useful knowledge and wisdom from that guy. He's sharp. Gabe Garza.
Gabe, look out! I'm coming after you. I'd love to get you on the show. And if we're wondering how the best way to connect with you, like what's the best way to connect? Social media?
RobertStJohn.com, and you can just Google me, and all that stuff comes up. Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and Twitter.
And this is episode 1153, and we'll link to any tools or services that we discussed in today's episode. If you're interested in Restaurant Systems Pro, you can head over to restaurantunstoppable.com/RSP, or just reach directly out to Restaurant Systems Pro, restaurantsystemspro.net/unstoppable, or just tell them that you learned about their product through Restaurant Unstoppable, because they will take extra good care of you if you do. And this is where I say thank you for taking time. I literally cannot do what I do without people like you. You make what I do possible.
Hey, thanks, Eric. It's good. It's been good having you here for the past couple of days. Good to see you, and wishing you the best. Keep up the good work. I'll keep listening and keep learning. You made a difference in our business. Keep it up.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Cheers.